October 12, 1942, Stalingrad Grain Elevator District. Obergefreiter Klaus Richter lowered his field glasses and chuckled as he observed the Soviet sniper position 800 meters across the rubble-strewn wasteland. The enemy rifleman was using what appeared to be an antique hunting rifle, its wooden stock scarred and weathered, its iron sights primitive compared to the precision optics adorning German weapons. "Mikhail, look at this," Richter called to his squad leader, pointing toward the distant figure. "Ivan is still using his grandfather's hunting rifle. How do they expect to fight the Wehrmacht with museum pieces?" What Richter couldn't know as he shared the joke with his comrades was that the ancient-looking rifle was a Mosin Nagant model 1891/30, and in the hands of Senior Sergeant Vasily Zaitsev, it had already claimed 149 German lives. Within the next 4 hours, that museum piece would fire the shot that would destroy not just individual soldiers, but the entire German Sixth Army's confidence in their technological superiority and tactical invincibility. The mathematics of destruction were already calculated in Zaitsev's mind as he settled behind his rifle in the ruins of a collapsed apartment building. The distance to the German observation post, 823 meters. Wind speed 8 kilometers per hour from the northeast. Temperature -4 degrees Celsius. The ancient rifle in his hands represented 51 years of Russian engineering perfection, refined through the crucible of the Great War, the Russian Civil War, and now the Great Patriotic War. Each component had been tested in combat by millions of soldiers across 5 decades of conflict. The German mockery of Soviet weapons reflected a fundamental misunderstanding of warfare that would prove catastrophic. Nazi propaganda had convinced German soldiers that their technological superiority guaranteed victory over primitive Slavic peoples using obsolete equipment. The reality was that the Mosin Nagant rifle, designed by Belgian Emil Nagant and Russian Captain Sergei Mosin in 1891, represented one of the most successful military rifles in history. Over 37 million had been manufactured, creating a weapon system so reliable and effective that it would remain in service for over 70 years. The rifle's technical specifications challenged German assumptions about Soviet industrial capability. The 7.62 by 54 mm R cartridge fired a 150 grain bullet at 2,800 feet per second, delivering tremendous stopping power at ranges exceeding 800 meters. The 5-round internal magazine could be loaded rapidly using stripper clips, while the bolt action was robust enough to function in the extreme conditions of the Eastern Front. Most importantly, the rifle's accuracy potential exceeded that of many more modern weapons when placed in skilled hands. Zaitsev represented the culmination of Russian marksmanship tradition, stretching back to the Cossacks and imperial hunting lodges. Born in the Urals, he had learned to shoot as a child, hunting deer and wolves in the endless forests where a missed shot meant starvation. His natural ability had been refined through military training that emphasized practical marksmanship over theoretical knowledge. By the time he reached Stalingrad, Zaitsev could place shots within a 4-inch circle at 400 meters using iron sights alone. The German Sixth Army approaching Stalingrad in autumn 1942 represented the pinnacle of Wehrmacht tactical evolution. General Friedrich Paulus commanded 250,000 of Germany's finest soldiers, equipped with the most advanced weapons German industry could produce. The Karabiner 98K rifles carried by German infantry featured precision manufacturing and superior metallurgy. The MG-42 machine guns provided unprecedented rates of fire. Panzerfaust anti-tank weapons could destroy any Soviet armor. Everything indicated German technological supremacy. Yet technology alone could not overcome the fundamental realities of urban warfare that would define the Battle of Stalingrad. In the rubble-strewn streets and collapsed buildings, the advantages of modern equipment were negated by ranges measured in meters rather than kilometers. The reliability and simplicity that made the insignificant appear primitive became assets when fighting in conditions that would destroy more sophisticated weapons. The morning of October 12th had begun with another German assault on the grain elevator, a massive concrete structure that dominated the industrial district. Obergefreiter Richter's company was tasked with eliminating Soviet snipers who had been inflicting steady casualties on German forces attempting to advance through the exposed approaches. Intelligence reports indicated that a single Soviet marksman was responsible for dozens of German deaths, using an observation post somewhere in the elevator complex. German counter-sniper efforts had failed repeatedly against this elusive opponent. Attempts to locate his position using conventional reconnaissance had been unsuccessful, while artillery strikes against suspected locations had accomplished nothing beyond adding more rubble to an already devastated landscape. The sniper appeared and disappeared like a ghost, killing German soldiers with mechanical precision before vanishing into the ruins. The German response reflected their systematic approach to military problems. Additional snipers were deployed with telescopic sights and high-velocity ammunition. Artillery observers were positioned to direct fire against suspected enemy positions. Machine gun teams were established to provide suppressive fire during German movements. Everything indicated that superior German organization and equipment would solve the problem through methodical application of overwhelming force. Zaitsev studied his opponents through the iron sights of his insignificant, noting their movements and tactical patterns. The Germans advanced with precision that revealed extensive training and experience, but they also displayed predictable behaviors that a patient sniper could exploit. Their confidence in their equipment made them careless about concealment, while their systematic approach created opportunities for an adversary who understood their methods. The key to successful sniping lay not in the rifle's technical specifications, but in the shooter's ability to read terrain, weather, and enemy behavior. Zaitsev had spent weeks studying the approaches to the grain elevator, identifying concealed positions, range cards, and escape routes. He knew which positions offered the best fields of fire, which routes provided concealment for movement, and which locations would be targeted by enemy counterfire. At 0847 hours, German artillery began a preparatory bombardment designed to suppress Soviet positions before the infantry assault. The shells fell throughout the elevator complex, creating clouds of dust and debris that obscured visibility while adding to the already extensive destruction. For 30 minutes, high explosive rounds pounded suspected sniper positions with mechanical regularity. When the barrage ended, German infantry began their advance with confidence that enemy resistance had been neutralized. Zaitsev had weathered the bombardment in a reinforced basement, his rifle protected from dust and debris that could affect its accuracy. As the shells stopped falling and German voices became audible across the rubble, he moved carefully to his primary firing position, a concealed location that offered excellent fields of fire while remaining invisible to enemy observation. The ancient rifle felt reassuring in his hands as he prepared for the engagement that would define his reputation. The German advance followed predictable patterns as assault teams moved through predetermined routes toward their objectives. Squad leaders used hand signals to coordinate movements while maintaining radio communication with supporting elements. Machine gun teams established overwatch positions, while riflemen bounded forward in disciplined rushes. Everything proceeded according to doctrine developed through years of successful operations. Obergefreiter Richter led his squad toward a pile of concrete debris that intelligence had identified as a potential sniper position. His confidence was justified by experience gained through 2 years of combat on the Eastern Front, where German tactical superiority had consistently overcome Soviet resistance. The Karabiner 98K rifle slung across his back represented the finest individual weapon German industry could produce, while his training emphasized marksmanship skills that exceeded Soviet standards. At 09:23 hours, Richter paused behind a collapsed wall to observe the terrain ahead. Through his binoculars, he could see movement in the shadows of the elevator structure, confirming intelligence reports about Soviet positions. The enemy appeared to be using antiquated equipment and primitive tactics that German firepower could easily overcome. He signaled his squad to prepare for the final assault on positions that appeared lightly defended. Zaitsev tracked the German squad leader through his iron sights, calculating range and wind deflection with practiced precision. The distance was 387 meters, well within effective range for the 7.62 by 54mm R cartridge. Wind conditions were negligible, while the target remained stationary long enough for a carefully aimed shot. The Mosin Nagant's trigger broke cleanly as Zaitsev applied steady pressure, sending a 150-grain bullet toward its target at 2,800 feet per second. The shot struck Obergefreiter Richter center mass, the heavy bullet penetrating his field equipment and body armor before expanding inside his chest cavity. The German squad leader collapsed without a sound, his body falling behind the concrete wall where his men couldn't immediately see what had happened. The ancient rifle had claimed another victim with the mechanical precision that had made it legendary throughout 5 decades of warfare. The psychological impact on Richter's squad was immediate and devastating. Their experienced leader had been killed instantly by a shot they hadn't heard, coming from a position they couldn't identify. The confidence built through years of successful operations evaporated as they realized they were facing an opponent whose capabilities exceeded their understanding. The primitive rifle they had mocked was proving more effective than their sophisticated weapons. German tactical doctrine emphasized aggressive response to sniper fire, but the squad found themselves paralyzed by uncertainty about their enemy's location and capabilities. Attempts to identify the source of the shot revealed nothing beyond empty ruins and shadows that could conceal dozens of positions. Radio calls for artillery support brought responses that fire missions were being prepared, but immediate assistance was unavailable. The ripple effects of Richter's death spread throughout the German assault force as word of the loss reached other units. The psychological warfare aspect of sniping exceeded its tactical impact, as soldiers who had felt invulnerable behind their modern equipment now understood that death could strike without warning from weapons they had dismissed as obsolete. Morale began deteriorating as men who had conquered half of Europe found themselves fearing an ancient rifle in skilled hands. Zaitsev had already displaced to his secondary position, following procedures developed through months of urban combat. The key to survival lay in constant movement, never firing more than one shot from any location, and maintaining multiple prepared positions throughout his operational area. The Mosin Nagant's iron sights required no adjustment for different ranges, while its reliability ensured consistent performance regardless of conditions. The German response evolved as officers recognized the threat posed by the Soviet sniper. Counter-sniper teams were deployed with telescopic sights and high-velocity ammunition designed specifically for precision shooting. Artillery observers were tasked with identifying the sniper's position for immediate fire missions. Machine gun teams received orders to maintain suppressive fire against suspected locations during German movements. These countermeasures reflected German military excellence, but also revealed their fundamental misunderstanding of the tactical situation. They were applying conventional solutions to an unconventional problem, using sophisticated equipment and systematic procedures against an opponent who operated outside their doctrinal framework. The ancient rifle that seemed primitive was actually perfectly adapted to conditions that negated modern technological advantages. At 10:34 hours, Zaitsev engaged his second target of the day, a German machine gun team attempting to establish an overwatch position. The MG-42 machine gun represented advanced German engineering, capable of firing 1,200 rounds per minute with devastating effect against infantry formations. but the crew's confidence in their weapon made them careless about concealment as they moved their equipment into position. The insignificant's bullet struck the machine gunner as he was adjusting his weapon's position, the 150-grain projectile severing his spinal cord and killing him instantly. The assistant gunner, trained to assume his comrade's role immediately, found himself paralyzed by the realization that their sophisticated weapon was useless against an enemy they couldn't see or locate. The psychological effect exceeded the tactical impact as German confidence continued eroding. German artillery responded with concentrated fire against the suspected sniper position, pounding the area with high explosive shells designed to destroy hardened targets. For 20 minutes, the bombardment continued with mechanical precision while German forces waited for confirmation that the threat had been eliminated. When the shelling ended, assault teams prepared to resume their advance with renewed confidence. Zaitsev had survived the bombardment by using the maze of tunnels and basements that connected buildings throughout the industrial district. His intimate knowledge of the terrain, gained through weeks of patient reconnaissance, enabled movement that German forces couldn't detect or predict. The ancient rifle remained functional despite dust and debris, its simple mechanism continuing to operate under conditions that would disable more sophisticated weapons. The pattern repeated throughout the afternoon as German attempts to neutralize the Soviet sniper failed against an opponent who understood urban warfare better than they did. Each German casualty created psychological effects that spread throughout the assault force, while the sniper's ability to strike without warning challenged fundamental assumptions about technological superiority. The old rifle was proving more effective than modern weapons through superior employment rather than advanced design. By 1500 hours, German casualties included 7 dead and 12 wounded, all victims of precise rifle fire from ranges that should have favored their modern equipment. The psychological impact exceeded the tactical losses as soldiers who had conquered Poland, France, and most of the Soviet Union found themselves stopped by a single marksman using a weapon older than most of their fathers. Morale problems began affecting the entire assault force. Major Wilhelm Hoffmann, commanding the German battalion, recognized that conventional tactics were inadequate against this unconventional threat. His forces were equipped with the finest weapons German industry could produce, supported by artillery and air power that should have guaranteed victory. Yet a single Soviet sniper using an antique rifle was inflicting casualties that threatened the entire operation's success. New approaches were needed immediately. The German solution involved deploying their most experienced marksman, Obergefreiter Heinrich König, equipped with a precision Karabiner 98K rifle fitted with a 4 by telescopic sight. König was a veteran of the Eastern Front with 47 confirmed kills, representing the pinnacle of German sniper training and equipment. His mission was to locate and eliminate the Soviet sniper using superior German technology and training. König's confidence was justified by extensive combat experience and equipment advantages that should have guaranteed success. His telescopic sight provided magnification that made target identification possible at ranges exceeding iron sight capabilities. His rifle was manufactured to precision tolerances using superior German metallurgy and quality control. His ammunition was loaded to exacting specifications that ensured consistent ballistic performance. Everything favored German success. The duel that followed would determine not just the tactical outcome of the local engagement, but the psychological balance of the entire Stalingrad campaign. König represented German technological supremacy and professional military excellence, while Zaitsev embodied Soviet determination and practical marksmanship skills. The ancient insignificant faced the modern Karabiner in a contest that would validate or destroy fundamental assumptions about equipment versus expertise. At 16:23 hours, Koenig identified what he believed was the Soviet sniper's position based on analysis of previous shooting angles and German casualty locations. His telescopic sight revealed movement in shadows that iron sights couldn't penetrate, confirming his location advantage. The range was 743 meters, well within his rifle's effective distance, while wind conditions were minimal. Everything indicated that superior German equipment would achieve decisive results. Zaitsev had detected the German counter-sniper through careful observation of enemy movements and equipment. The telescopic sight that gave Koenig his advantage also created reflection signatures that revealed his position to an experienced observer. The challenge lay in engaging a well-concealed opponent at extended range, using iron sights against telescopic equipment. The ancient rifle would be tested against modern technology in the ultimate marksmanship contest. The psychological pressure on both snipers was immense as they maneuvered for advantage in a duel where the first shot would likely be decisive. Koenig had the equipment advantage, but faced an opponent whose reputation was spreading throughout German forces. Zaitsev had the terrain advantage, but confronted technology that exceeded his rifle's theoretical capabilities. Both men understood that the engagement would determine more than individual survival. Koenig fired first, his telescopic sight enabling precise aiming at a range where iron sights provided limited target resolution. The bullet struck concrete inches from Zaitsev's position, confirming the German sniper's location while demonstrating the accuracy of his equipment. The psychological effect was immediate as Zaitsev realized he faced an opponent whose capabilities matched his own, despite equipment disadvantages. The return shot from the Mosin Nagant required calculation and instinct that transcended technical specifications. Zaitsev estimated range and wind deflection using experience gained through months of urban combat, while his iron sights provided aiming references that seemed inadequate for the distance involved. The trigger brake was perfect as the ancient rifle sent its bullet toward the German position with mechanical precision. Koenig's body armor and helmet provided protection against fragments and small caliber rounds, but were inadequate against the heavy bullet fired by the Mosin Nagant. The 150-grain projectile struck him in the upper chest, penetrating protective equipment and expanding inside his body cavity. Germany's most experienced sniper fell victim to a rifle his comrades had dismissed as a museum piece, validating Soviet marksmanship over technological superiority. The death of Koenig sent shockwaves through German forces that extended far beyond tactical considerations. Their best marksmen, equipped with their finest weapons, had been defeated by an opponent using equipment they considered obsolete. The psychological impact challenged fundamental assumptions about German superiority while validating Soviet capabilities that propaganda had dismissed as primitive. Word of the sniper duel spread throughout both armies as soldiers struggled to understand how ancient equipment could overcome modern technology. German confidence, built through years of technological dominance, began cracking under the realization that superior weapons guaranteed nothing without superior employment. Soviet morale soared as proof emerged that German advantages could be overcome through skill and determination. The tactical effects multiplied as German forces found themselves paralyzed by fear of an enemy they couldn't see, locate, or effectively counter. Advance operations stopped as soldiers who had felt invulnerable behind modern equipment now understood that death could strike from weapons their grandfathers might have carried. The psychological warfare aspect of sniping was proving as effective as its tactical impact. Major Hoffmann's assessment of the tactical situation revealed the magnitude of the problem his battalion faced. A single Soviet sniper using an antique rifle had inflicted casualties exceeding those suffered in major battles. while psychological effects were undermining combat effectiveness throughout his command. Conventional solutions had failed against an unconventional threat that operated outside German doctrinal understanding. The failure at Stalingrad's grain elevator became symbolic of larger German problems on the Eastern Front, as technological superiority proved inadequate against determined opponents fighting on familiar terrain. The Mosin Nagant rifle, dismissed as primitive by German propaganda, was demonstrating effectiveness that modern weapons couldn't match when employed by skilled users under appropriate conditions. Zaitsev's success with the ancient rifle inspired Soviet forces throughout Stalingrad as proof that German advantages could be overcome through individual excellence and proper equipment employment. The psychological impact exceeded tactical considerations as soldiers gained confidence that their weapons could defeat German technology when used skillfully. Morale effects spread throughout the garrison as news of the snipers' achievements circulated. The strategic implications extended beyond individual engagements to encompass German confidence in their overall military superiority. If a single Soviet soldier using an old rifle could defeat their best marksman with modern equipment, what did this suggest about larger tactical and strategic assumptions? The questions raised by the sniper's success challenged fundamental beliefs about technological determinism in warfare. By evening on October 12th, German assault operations had effectively ceased as commanders struggled to develop countermeasures against a threat they couldn't understand or effectively engage. The ancient Mosin Nagant had achieved strategic effects far exceeding its tactical capabilities through psychological warfare that challenged German assumptions about their invincibility. The rifle that German troops had mocked that morning had proven more effective than any weapon in their arsenal, not through superior technology, but through superior employment by a skilled user who understood its capabilities and limitations. The lesson would be repeated throughout the Eastern Front, as Soviet forces proved that determination and skill could overcome technological disadvantages. Zaitsev's total for October 12th reached 11 confirmed kills, each achieved with the old rifle that German soldiers had dismissed as obsolete. The ancient weapon had demonstrated that effectiveness in warfare depended more on the user than the equipment, while proving that technological superiority meant nothing without tactical excellence. The shot that destroyed German confidence was fired by a museum piece that understood warfare better than modern science. The historical significance of the Mosin Nagant extended far beyond its immediate tactical impact at Stalingrad. The rifle's development in 1891 had occurred during the height of European imperial expansion, when military theorists believed that technological superiority guaranteed victory over primitive peoples. 51 years later, that same weapon was proving those assumptions catastrophically wrong against the supposedly superior German war machine. The irony was profound. German engineers had spent years developing the Karabiner 98K rifle, incorporating advanced metallurgy, precision manufacturing, and scientific ballistics. Yet, the Russian rifle, designed when electricity was still a novelty and most of the world traveled by horse, was proving more effective in the crucible of urban combat. The lesson was lost on German leadership, who continued to believe that industrial sophistication would overcome Soviet determination. Zaitsev understood the psychological dimensions of his work in ways that transcended marksmanship. Each shot fired from the ancient rifle carried symbolic weight that exceeded its kinetic energy. When German soldiers witnessed their comrades falling to a weapon their propaganda had dismissed as obsolete, the foundations of their confidence began cracking. The Mosin Nagant became a symbol of Soviet resilience that no amount of German technology could overcome. The rifle's ammunition told its own story of Russian industrial adaptation. The 7.62 by 54 mm R cartridge, designed alongside the rifle in 1891, had been continuously refined through 5 decades of warfare. By 1942, Soviet factories were producing ammunition with ballistic characteristics that matched or exceeded German equivalents, using manufacturing techniques that emphasized reliability over theoretical perfection. The heavy bullet that killed König represented millions of rounds produced by workers who understood their contribution to victory. Throughout the afternoon of October 12th, additional German casualties mounted as Zaitsev continued his methodical elimination of enemy forces. Each engagement followed similar patterns: German confidence followed by Soviet precision, technological advantage negated by superior fieldcraft, modern equipment defeated by ancient wisdom. The scoreboard told a story that challenged everything German military science claimed to understand about warfare. Lieutenant Werner Hoffmann, observing the carnage from a concealed position, radioed his company commander with growing desperation. "Sir, we've lost 14 men to a single sniper using what appears to be a hunting rifle. Our counter-sniper teams cannot locate him, our artillery cannot suppress him, and our modern equipment provides no advantage. Request permission to withdraw until effective countermeasures can be developed." The response from higher headquarters reflected the cognitive dissonance that was paralyzing German decision-making throughout Stalingrad. Orders came to continue the assault using superior German training and equipment, as if repeating failed tactics would somehow produce different results. The ancient rifle had created a tactical problem that German doctrine couldn't solve because it operated outside their conceptual framework. As darkness fell over Stalingrad on October 12th, Zaitsev carefully cleaned and maintained his rifle using procedures learned from his grandfather, who had carried a similar weapon through the Great War. The ritual connected him to generations of Russian soldiers who had trusted their lives to the reliable mechanism of the insignificant. The weapon that German troops had mocked that morning had proven itself once again in the crucible of combat. The Battle of Stalingrad would continue for months, but October 12th marked the psychological turning point when German forces realized their technological advantages were not decisive. The ancient insignificant rifle, wielded by a skilled marksman, had achieved what modern weapons could not: the destruction of enemy morale and confidence through superior employment rather than advanced design.